Morning. Uh, Late morning if you're on the East Coast. I appreciate you guys being with me here around lunchtime, I guess, back east. Needless to say, the show is starting off a little differently than I intended this morning. Oh boy. I woke up normal time, do the school thing, do the dad thing, and I go into our no DQ group discussion, and there's things bubbling that Road Warrior Animal may have passed away, and sure enough, he has. Joe Laurinaitis was 60 years old. Everybody in wrestling, anyway, will remember him best as Animal, Road Warrior Animal of the Legion of Doom. The Road Warriors. He was actually called the Road Warrior at one point as well during his career, and a couple other gimmicks, I believe. I'll have to take a deep look later, but yeah. 60 years old, and I know I put 69 originally on my original post on Twitter and Facebook, and that was a simple fat finger typo. Honestly, I meant to type 60, and it came out as a 6 and a 9 because they're close together on the keyboard. So my apologies to anybody that got torqued by that. To say I'm messed up about this is an understatement. I loved the Road Warriors. I grew up on them. When I first started watching professional wrestling back in 1990, Hawk and Animal were just starting to really cross over from Jim Crockett Promotions, WCW, and really make a stand in the WWF. And I often refer back to my first ever Coliseum video release I ever bought was SummerSlam 91. Well, Hawk and Animal became the tag team champions at the Garden that night against the Nasty Boys. And I'll never forget that match. It was a no DQ, no count out, basically a street fight all over the Garden. And I'll always remember in particular Hawk grabbing the big tray of drinks and smashing it over. I think it was Jerry Saggs' back. It may have been Brian Knobbs. It's been, almost 30 years. Forgive me that minor slip of the memory part of it. But yeah, these guys were the most intense, the most, they were probably the greatest tag team I ever saw. And I know the other day somebody asked me what the greatest tag team of all time was, and I said the Dudley Boys. And I do stand by the fact that the best tag team I saw live anyway were indeed Bubba and Devon, but the greatest tag team of my lifetime. It's not even a contest. These guys were the most dominant team of the 80s and even dominant into the 90s, the early part of the 90s. And they were together a long, long time, and they attempted a comeback, if you recall, shortly before Road Warrior Hawk, Mike Hakestrand passed away back in 2003. So, and I remember covering that when that happened too on No DQ's channel. So it's tough, and I did invite Aaron and Greg to come on and join me since I'm also on their channel this morning. And again, I appreciate that, guys. Thank you very much to both of you. Because I know that I'm basically the lead story for No DQ, the first thing for No DQ's channel today, since the passing. So I'm kind of the lead-in guy, and I wanted to make sure I gave the opportunity to both gentlemen to come on here. If they do, that's fine. If not, we'll move on shortly. But geez, I hate when this happens in this business, because it's just you have to just kind of we've always had it ingrained in us in wrestling that the show must go on. We must we shall endure and all that Churchill stuff. But it's hard because it really chaps my ass, to be honest with you, because I had the opportunity to have Animal on Talk Wrestling, Extreme Mayhem, Extreme Mayhem, when Hawk passed, and I remember calling him. I'll never forget it. I called him because I had his phone number through a mutual friend, and he was actually ready to watch his boy play in a game, and he declined my invite, but said he would get back to me in the future, and we never talked. I think we talked maybe twice after that at conventions and whatnot, but never made it happen, and it sucks that I let another one get away. It's like, ugh. But let me bring in a guy who I did advertise today because he is waiting in the green room for me, and I'm sure he's got some fond memories of the arguably the greatest tag team in the history of wrestling, and they were certainly dominant in the brand he represents, the NWA. Let me bring in TK, Todd Keneley. Good morning, sir.
Good morning. Good morning. How's it going, Jeff?
It's, you know what? It was going better about an hour ago. I'll be honest with you.
You're not kidding, man. You're not kidding. One of the absolute greats. One of the just great representatives of the sport, of the business, and
Sure.
A team that no doubt transcended the business and did things outside of the business, like their deal with Zubaz. They were one of those. They were one of those talents that got it and were able to branch beyond the business and make deals that would benefit the talent today and beyond. And I mean, I'm so shocked. It was awful. Years ago, we lost Hawk way too soon, but Animal to me seemed like one of those guys that had warded off kind of the curse, if you will, of 80s wrestling. He was a guy that, he had a great head on his shoulders. He seemed like he was doing great things. He had his son in the NFL at the time. And, it just seemed like one of those guys that it was not going to happen to Animal. So to lose him at 60 is just, it's crushing. It's really, really devastating.
Yeah. It's one of those things where, guys that are our age, in our generation, our dads are the age these guys are. And it's like, to think about, like losing your parent, or you lose somebody, somebody that close to you at that age. It's like, you can't process that. And it just, again, it kind of chaps my ass thinking about it. But I recently joined the Colorado Rally Club this year for the first time in my entire lifetime of wrestling fandom. And the back cover of the year is always Hawk, Animal, and Paul. Like, that's their back cover. And it's like, I saw him yesterday. I was like, I was actually thinking about, I was going to, send him a tweet. That's, hey, and I didn't do it. And and now I can't. It's just, it's frustrating. And you and I saw each other last at Jake the Snake Roberts, not stand up, but one man show, I guess we'll call it, out in Irvine. And we talked then about, how blessed Jake was that he, pulled the nose up. And it's just, it's hard to think that Animal, is gone now. It sucks.
Yeah. Very, very hard to believe. And, I'm with you, man. Like, growing up, I was very much like a WWF kid because that's just what was accessible, and I saw the commercials for, the LJN action figures, and I was I watched Saturday mornings, but I also was just a huge wrestling fan. So I would also buy wrestling magazines as a kid. I'd buy Pro Wrestling Illustrated. I'd buy The Wrestler. I'd buy all that.
Oh yeah.
And
line the editor's pockets with money every month.
And I couldn't get enough of it,
Right.
And there would always be the arena reports of shows around, and then and the Road Warriors were obviously a constant fixture on covers.
Oh yeah.
So they were in, and I was immediately just attracted to the whole presentation, the shoulder pads with the spikes. My brother and I were big, always played football. And the face paint and everything. And so like you couldn't not notice those guys and be like, what's this all about? So the Road Warriors, it's funny that, the last couple of weeks I've been calling NWA world title matches, but as the Road Warriors, it was one of the, main factors that really opened my eyes to what the NWA was doing in the 80s. And I was like, I want to know more about these guys. And I remember, like WrestleMania 4, I didn't really have pay-per-view at the time, so to speak.
Right.
And Clash of the Champions that year went up against Mania 4.
Yes, sir.
You know, and Sting and Ric Flair in the main event was just like blew my mind because I hadn't seen anything like that. I just really hadn't been open to the product. But the Road Warriors were always a constant for me. You know, I love those guys. I mean, just they were so physical. They were so badass. And then, you know, fast forward, I got to work with them and call a couple of their matches in UPW. You know, we brought them in.
That's right. I forgot they brought them in there. That's right.
Yeah, we brought the Road Warriors in, and they faced, like, you know, the Ballard Brothers and Hardcore Inc. And so I got to call a handful of Road Warrior matches, which was just, you know, a dream come true.
Right. Yeah. I did not, unfortunately, get into UPW as a full-time fan until after they had already passed through. But I was mentioning before you came in that my first Coliseum home video I ever purchased was SummerSlam 91. And just watching those two and Brian and Jerry in a street fight at the Garden was just bananas. And, you know, I'll never forget the image of Hawk, you know, taking the big drink tray and just smashing, I forget which one of them it was, but just whopping him over the back with it. It was like, that's a little much. That's a little crazy. And it's funny. You mentioned the Zubaz thing. Whenever I picture Hawk and Animal, I either picture, you know, the shoulder pads and the big, you know, the face paint, or I imagine those god-awful pants they wore at the gym. One or the other. There was no in between. You either saw Hawk and Animal in full gear or in tank tops and Zubaz. That was it. Yep.
Got off the pants, but it got them a lot of money, you know?
Oh, yeah. Huge. Yeah. It got them over, got the pants over, and lined their pockets, like you said.
So. You know, it's so funny you mentioned that match because, you know, I was at WrestleMania 7.
Oh, wow.
Which was, you know, a pretty memorable Mania. I mean, obviously, like, we should have gotten Hogan Warrior rematch at the Coliseum, but Desert Storm breaks out, and so we get what we get.
Right.
But the Road Warriors in that show absolutely squashed Power and Glory, you know, and I got to see them live, and I was just, you know, I couldn't have been happier. But I was also growing up, the Hart Foundation, you know, was really like one of my favorite tag teams. I remember the 2 out of 3 falls match with Demolition at SummerSlam. And so when the Harts, and I think it was a big upset. And when the Harts lost to the Nasty Boys at WrestleMania, I remember come SummerSlam that year, I was so happy that the Legion of Doom got the win. Because, I mean, I'm sorry. Like, I just always thought the Nasty Boys were trash. I really do. I was never a fan. I never got it. I didn't think they were any good in the ring. You know, and come to, you know, I've worked with them since, and they're good dudes, and I get it.
Yeah, they're great guys.
Yeah, I get it. But at the time, as a fan, I couldn't have been happier. You know, and then like a kick to the stomach, and a helmet pops up, and he, you know, grab it, hits him. Like, I was so happy. I think more happy for that win than just about any other, you know, in the Road Warriors' decorated career, because I was just so happy that they got the titles off the Nasty Boys.
Right. Yeah. It's just like, I mean, you know, as a, let's see, I had just turned 8 prior to that WrestleMania. So yeah, as an 8-year-old kid, you know, watching Hawk, you know, boot the Nasties in the gut and then just wallop with Jimmy's motorcycle. But it was perfect. It worked out so well. And then you fast forward a few years, and they actually were wearing motorcycle helmets to the ring until 2000. You go, oh,
yeah. We won't talk about Rocco.
God. Yeah, it's
LOD.
I think as far gone as Mike was by that point, even he had it right with the Rocco thing. It was like, no, Scott, no, why?
Yeah,
why?
Yeah, right. You know what? And then, I mean, just so much longevity. You know, whether it be NWA, AWA, WWF, even ECW. Like, I mean, they won the titles everywhere, and they were just you couldn't question the Road Warriors. Like, I mean, the Road Warriors were there. They were legit, just badass. You never said, well, I don't know. No, the Road Warriors were the real deal. And then, you know, I remember, and I think it was probably a bit of a kind of little known match, but I remember there was a Monday Nitro match, and I want to say It was either, I can't remember. It was either the Road Warriors or the Steiners that hadn't been there. Maybe the Steiners. But Road Warriors, Steiners battled on Monday Nitro. And it
Pretty
was
sure it was both of them at the time. I think it came back around the same time, and WCW went all here.
Dude, I just remember that being just a brawl and just hard hitting. I mean, those two teams, they absolutely beat the crap out of each other. It was such a great match. And it just reminded you, how great those two teams were. But yeah, it's just, it's great to once again be calling NWA matches, because you look back at, the likes of the Crockett Cup and stuff. And there was always such a huge emphasis on tag team wrestling in the National Wrestling Alliance, and
Absolutely.
And the Road Warriors, of course, were at the forefront of that.
Yep. I remember distinctly when, and we're going to transition to where we were going to go in the first place today. So I appreciate the segue, much appreciated. I remember when William Patrick Corgan bought the company, or bought the name, bought the rights and everything, and they started, having content come out on YouTube. I was like just screaming with joy that Animal had been brought into second Jax and Crimson. I was like, oh, cool. And they kind of gave him a kind of a quasi Road Warrior look. So it was a cool thing. And it was, I was hoping it would lead to something further. And then, the Crockett Cup came and went a year and a half ago. And I remember that they had Crimson challenge Nick Aldis, and then there was no more Animal. I was like, huh, okay. So,
yeah, and kind of the same with Paul Ellering, with AOP. And I hope that maybe now that AOP's out there on the open market, if the NWA gets back to doing their own tapings, right. I wouldn't hate seeing Paul Ellering and AOP do something as a tribute to the Road Warriors.
Right, exactly. Well, let's go ahead. Let me change the brand back there again. Hawk, I know you were waiting there for him to get there, so please don't make too much of a mess. Please.
it's gonna get rough up there.
Yeah, for sure. I guarantee those guys are already whooping that ass up there, so God help them. All right, off we go. And I know you're going to see Double Todd Keneley there for a second, but there it is.
Everybody loves Double Todd Keneley.
All Todd all the time. So yeah. Again, I said it on Twitter, and I'll say it here now. I love the presentation. And I know that I was royally, I guess the buzzword is ass chat today, but I would chat my ass with the buffering last week. I was kind of a dick. I'll be honest with you. I really was. I was really really poopy on it. And I felt bad looking back, because when I went back and watched it later last week, I was like, damn, this was a good show. Really and was. Last night was, I dare say, start to finish, a little maybe even better, because every single match hit on point.
Yeah, well, and it didn't have that stigma. And again, that was, we had a lot up against us in week one. Just the challenge of putting on a live pay-per-view broadcast is there's a lot that entails, and we, guys in the truck, their hair was catching on fire, there's a lot going on.
Yeah.
Like the Wizard of Oz when he's pushing all the buttons. Don't pay no attention to the man behind the curtain. But I mean, week one, we had legit, 100% legit, a 2-hour power outage right when talent was showing up, for call time.
Oh, so shit.
And it wasn't Thunder Studios, it was the entire block in Long Beach.
Gotta love Long Beach, man.
So any, graphics that were being put together, any interviews that were going to be shot pre-taped, everything got put on the back burner. And it just kind of became a microcosm for the day. And it was one of those things. And I guess that power outage actually played a big role in whatever happened with the fight stream. So for the fans that, watched week one on In Demand, everything was flawless. So it wasn't from us.
No.
But, things happen, and it sucks, because I do believe that week one was a solid show. I thought the in-ring effort was great, and timing certainly got away, and you got an hour and a half to play with, and Aldis and Bennett deserved to be able to breathe a little more. But what they did deliver was a very emotionally charged and chaotic and exciting main event, I thought. When you have a ref getting speared 30 seconds into a title match, it was like, what? Even on the call, I was like, oh my God.
I can hear you and Joe and Alyssa go, oh, Jesus.
Okay, this is where we're going. 30 seconds in, you have the ref gets speared out of his shoes. And then, maybe a minute and a half in, you got a tombstone on the ramp. I'm like, all right, this is where we're going.
All right, we're doing this way. Very good. All right, settle in.
Yeah. So, and looking online, it looked like, most fans are like, yeah, it was really fun. It was a really fun sprint. And, when Aldis is in the Kingsland Cloverleaf and reaching out for Maria and screaming, I need this. I mean, that's powerful stuff. That's real life stuff.
Mike's whole story. I mean, just, we as fans have all lived that with him. I mean, we've seen him and Maria. They both get signed. The hope is there. It's like, oh, wow, they're going to get WWE stage. And then they did what they did with him. It was like, oh.
Yeah. I mean, and they were really entertaining to watch it, in New Japan, ROH, Impact. And so, it was unfortunate. But, yes, last night we got to hit the reset button.
Yes.
We didn't look back. Obviously, we, worked on fixing things. And you're right. I just thought it was a fresh breath of air. Last night was the product that, the United Wrestling Network and the NWA intended to display with this thing. And, one thing that I loved, because growing, and this was, very much like an Aaron Stevens things, but it's funny, unbeknownst to him, I had brought this up previously and was something that I was really pushing for. I really love the way that the broadcast started with the Saturday Night's Main Event style, promos, the quick hits with the background, because, the talent is going to put over the matches much better than, me and whoever sit next to me with match graphics. And I always, for me, like growing up in the 80s, Saturday Night's Main Event was the pinnacle for me, because Saturday mornings you would get all the, you'd get a lot of squash matches and you'd get this and that, and it would build up to really live events, house shows.
Right.
But Saturday Night's Main Event was such a payoff, because you would see, Hogan against guys that could give him a threat for the championship. You'd see, the British Bulldogs and the Hart Foundation stuff for the tag titles. Absolutely. You'd see the Intercontinental title. And so, to me, the way we kick things off with, unabashedly, like very much Saturday Night's Main Event style promos, I think set the stage, and it was fun. And the show needs to be fun,
Well, I think it's no secret. You and I both know. Dave, came up, a fan of that product as well. So I'm sure that was no unintentional moment there with the framing of that presentation. So bravo to everybody at United Wrestling. It was great. And the first match out of the gate last night was just, again, bananas. You had Danny Limelight and is it going to be BFK or BHK or
yeah. And so let me, I'll fill everybody in.
Yeah, sorry. I know he's Johnny Goodtime. I know he's Kevin Martinson, but of course. The BHK thing, I'm like, I don't know why that happened.
From the man himself, because it's never been put out there. What is BHK? Big Hunky Kev.
Yes, I love him. I miss him and Yuma so much. Like I do, guys. God.
I love it. His music is great. So we get the Saturday Night's Main Event, promo opens. Yeah. And then we get, the BHK space music. Good time.
But yeah, these two guys had a tremendous match, and you know what, you would expect it. Both these guys are amazing talents. It's funny, people don't realize that the United Wrestling Network shows Hollywood and Arizona are on Fight TV. So they're not exactly a secret, but it's like the whole cliche, the world's best kept secret, man. It's right there. This brand, United Wrestling Network, I think is grossly underappreciated by the wrestling world en masse. And now with these pay-per-views every Tuesday, it's like, oh, okay. So where are these guys again? It's like every weekend, man, on Fight TV. So
yeah, well, and that is a good point, because obviously United Wrestling Network, which was born out of an absence of the NWA, but we can get to that. But Championship Wrestling from Hollywood obviously had a long-standing relationship, yes, with the NWA. And I even mentioned it during the Watts Eli Drake match that both those guys tangled with Scrap Iron Adam Pearce when he held the 10 pounds of gold.
Yes.
So, I mean, that goes way back. But when NWA Power debuted, it's much fanfare, and everybody, and rightfully so, by the way, but everybody loved the retro feel of that show, the retro graphics, the studio setting. But and even though we've had a great relationship with the NWA over the years, I think David Marquez had a real chip on his shoulder. Everybody was like, this is amazing. They brought back studio wrestling. And Marquez is like, I've been doing this for 10 years.
Yeah.
So I think that this show, bringing in the NWA fan base, hopefully, because of the NWA talent, will open a lot of people's eyes to not only the presentation of a Championship Wrestling from Hollywood or a Championship Wrestling from Arizona or our regional, broadcast of the show, but our talent as well. And so, yeah, it's win-win all around. But yes, I thought that, you couldn't ask for a better match to kick things off for week 2 than Martinson and Danny Limelight Rivera. They were coming off of a match on Hollywood where I think they only showed maybe a fraction of what they could do. And this thing was a sprint, and it was crazy. That Limelight, big dive to the outside. You had Martinson just throw for distance, Limelight onto the ramp, Buster onto the ramp. I mean, it was all the way to kick things off.
I mean, you don't really see it, first glance. Kevin is no weak dude. He is a big, strong, hulking dude. He's just he's got strength for days. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, Martinson's power is very much underappreciated because for a long time he was a tag team wrestler, and you saw all the double teams and stuff. And Martinson can high fly with the best of them. That guy is a freaking beast.
He is.
He really is.
Yeah,
he really is.
When you get close to him, it's like, dude, you are huge. It's crazy. But when you talk about big guys on last night's show, I mean, is there any guy that was ever under briefly the WWE umbrella that was more miscast and grossly misused than Watts? And now you had him and Eli Drake, another guy who was under the umbrella briefly, and then went back to the NWA, or actually went back to the United Wrestling Network first, because people forget that he was the last major client of our buddy Percy Pringle. Percy chose Sean and to a certain extent Brian Cage as well, but Percy really went all in with Sean Ricker, Eli Drake, and I will never forget that, because I got to I got to befriend Percy toward the end, and I'll never forget when we went to the show after Percy passed, and Eli Drake, was behind the curtain there at the Glendale Studios, and the urn was sitting right there, and I just kind of sit there and I just looked at Sean, and he looked at me, looked at him, and he goes, "Do it quick." So I grabbed and took it, and Sean took the picture of me with the urn. I think about it now, I go, damn, that was powerful shit.
No doubt.
Just the fact that the whole aura of the day was about Percy, and Sean saw how much it was renting space in my head. He goes, "Here you go, brother." Real quick. And then, he literally took the urn out of my hand and went through the curtain with it. I was like,
yeah.
Shit.
One thing that I will never forget, okay, because So my son, who is now 15, like time flies, right?
Jesus, really?
Was born in 2005. So when we started the Galaxy, it was 2009.
Yeah.
So 4 years old, and my son Jack kind of grew up with what we've done on Hollywood. But I'll never forget when we were in the Showcase Theater right on La Brea there, across from Pink's Hot Dogs. It was a time where Percy was on the show.
Yeah.
And Percy was managing Sean Ricker at the time, but Eli Drake.
Yeah.
And you know what? I'll never forget, because my son, just by default became a huge fan of wrestling, right? Because I'm his dad. But I would show him, older matches and classic, WWF. And, he and I have always loved Halloween. So he became quickly a big fan of The Undertaker and the whole Undertaker pallbearer presentation.
Right.
So my son, who would have been, maybe 5 at the time, 6, we're kind of going backstage and running around and getting ready for a Hollywood taping. And we walk out of like the backstage curtain and almost run into into Percy.
Right.
I'll never forget, because, Percy at the time was Percy Pringle.
Right.
And it's just one of those weird moments that you can't describe. But we stop and we go face to face with Percy.
Yeah.
And Percy looks down at my son and he goes, "Hi, son. I'm Paul Bearer." I'm like, oh my God, and he puts his hand out. And my son shakes his hand. I'm like, oh my God, what a moment. And it's funny you say what you did with the urn, because that same show, my son and I are backstage and the urn is sitting there. And I'm like, I look at Jack, I go, you got to take a picture. So my son grabs the urn, but he's so scared that Percy or Paul is going to come around the corner, that the look on his face, he's like, and he almost looks like he's doing a Paul Bearer face.
That's fantastic.
It's my favorite picture of all time. It's great. It's great.
Yeah,
but
I think I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I was gonna say, just to get back on track.
Right.
Sean Ricker, Eli Drake. There's no question that he so much benefited from that time, because here's a guy that even before that was a WWE developmental guy that had gone, probably OVW at the time, or maybe FCW, but he just got grounded in his time with Percy.
Yep.
And yeah, you mentioned Brian Cage. They were a tag team. They were a natural selection.
Yep.
Current Brian Cage looks like he ate that Brian Cage.
Brian Cage looks like he had Percy Pringle's breakfast circa 2002. Just he's huge.
Yeah, but it was great. And then what I remember too very vividly of that time, and you mentioned Percy's untimely passing, was the very first red carpet rumble.
Yep.
In Championship Wrestling from Hollywood. And this is special for me too, because I was at Impact Wrestling at the time. I wasn't under any kind of official contract. I was
still
trying to negotiate, which would, eventually lead to my doom. But the red carpet rumble comes around and Marquez reached out. I'm like, I'm not signed. So I came back to do the red carpet rumble, the very first red carpet rumble, which was in Anaheim.
Yep.
And Percy had passed.
Yeah.
And so Ricker kind of dedicated that match. And if you remember, he came out shrouded in black, almost like a druid or something.
Right.
And for his entrance, they played the Percy soundbite from WrestleMania 20.
Yep, I remember very much.
Then he shed the cloak, and then and then Ricker came out number 1 in the Rumble, ran the field. It ended up with him and Scorpio Sky as the final 2, which with the red carpet rumble, when you get to the final 2, it's a traditional match.
Right. Kind of like calling for the gold style.
Yes, exactly. And then Ricker, won the Heritage title. And I mean, what a moment. And what was even better, so to top it all off, Ryan Taylor, who won the very first PP3 Cup.
Yep.
At the time, it was just the urn. It didn't have the trophy base on it yet.
Right.
So Ryan Taylor comes out and cashes in unsuccessfully. Ricker wins. Eli Drake beats Ryan Taylor. And so you have the show goes off the air with Sean Ricker at the time, Eli Drake holding up his newly won Heritage title and just straight up the urn as a tribute for Percy. And I mean, come on, man. Magic.
Storybook movie shit right there.
No better than that.
To this day, that's the only red carpet rumble I've actually been able to attend. Once Dave moved out to Port Hueneme with the tapings, like I've been to maybe 3 shows just because it's balls far. It's
haul.
Yeah, and I as you know, I don't drive, so trying to get anybody, well, where's the show? Port Hueneme. Where? And then you look back and go, I ain't going out there. That's way too fun. But so.
Dude, I remember the first time I went to the Ocean View Pavilion and I took my son and I was like, we're driving and you go way up the 101.
Yeah.
And then you get off and you drive through a bunch of agricultural area, a lot of farmland.
Right.
So I'm talking to my son. I'm like, yeah, Dave says it's right on the beach. And we get off and we're driving through all this farmland. And my son's like, oh, you sure? You sure we're right here? But then you drive through that all. And next thing you know, you're on the beach.
Yeah.
And I don't know, dude. It's like aliens just dropped that place, out of nowhere. I don't know how Marquez ever found the Ocean View Pavilion.
It's a beautiful facility, and honestly, it's the way they set it up for the tapings. It's probably my favorite presentation. I will always love the Region Showcase because that's where I first saw the entire thing together in 2010 or whatever it was, and that's when I saw Adam and Colt, which you are a huge part of them, and we'll get to that later, I'm sure. But I was at the Galaxy, I was at all the places, but the Ocean View Pavilion just feels more like, I don't know, like you guys belong there more than you belonged at the Showcase or Glendale Studios or whatever.
Glendale Studios was great. We had some great stuff
it
there.
Really was.
Fact, Eli Drake last night was like, he said, I think that was the pinnacle in terms of the crowd and everything else. But Ocean View Pavilion feels like home.
Yep.
And it has, and this is kudos to the United Wrestling Network production staff.
Yep.
They have built that. I mean, if you remember when we first started there, they had the big like Roman columns and red curtains, and now there's monitors everywhere. And then for a while there were the banners of all the champions, and it has turned into a premier filming location, so much so that Impact is filmed there.
Yep.
And now more recently, New Japan Pro Wrestling had filmed Lions Break Collision and Strong there. I mean, and that is a testament to what the United Wrestling Network production staff has done, because they have made that into a premier filming location for the top, some of the top promotions in the business, on top of us. Yeah, so, for New Japan to be like, yeah, this is where we want to be. New Japan is very particular about their presentation.
Oh, yeah.
And, that's a huge compliment. And the fact that some of our talent, like a Danny Limelight or a Jordan Clearwater, have been invited to compete on those shows is huge.
It's great. So last night, it was so funny watching Eli and Eric, wrestle, because I literally came up in the business, if you even call it that, with Watts. When I was working for Gary Yapp back in the day, Watts was one of our premier talents. He may have been an Epic War champion at one point. I don't remember. God, that was so long ago now. But it was great to see both of them. I love the story it told. I love the story you guys told on commentary about they'd been friends forever, but they never touched one-on-one. You mentioned they both challenged Adam at one point for the championship. I'll never forget, you know, I mentioned earlier that Watts was just ridiculously underutilized when he was under the WWE umbrella for a brief time, but his character, his development, I feel, has just been something I did not expect, but I'm overjoyed it happened because it couldn't happen to a nicer guy off camera. I love Eric Watts absolutely to pieces, and his big nasty character, the evolution of Darth Watts, which, by the way, great nerd moment, as you mentioned on Twitter last night. Fantastic.
Huge nerd moment, yes.
Huge nerd moment, absolutely. And just both these guys have come so far from where, granted, they're both been huge stars, you know, on a lot of different levels, but both these guys have come so far from where I first saw them with Marquez a decade ago or so. It's just a great to see them both, and they had a great match last night between the two of them. It was awesome.
I thought so. Yeah, I thought it was great. I thought it told a great story, and it enabled me to talk more in depth about the history of championship wrestling from Hollywood, which is what Primetime Live is all about. It's about introducing fans that maybe aren't so familiar with the UWN talent, and like I said, the chip on Marquez's shoulder of, hey, if you like what you see, make sure you now tune in to Championship Wrestling from Hollywood. And it really has been that kind of conglomeration of, like, last week we saw Hammerstone defend the West Coast Pro Championship, which West Coast Pro is the sponsor for our Northern California broadcast of Championship Wrestling.
Right.
So everything's coming together, and but yeah, it was so fun, and especially sometimes, truth is stranger than fiction. Like, who would have thought that these are two, would have been two huge stars of championship wrestling from Hollywood back in the day, and the fact that they never met, and now we get to put it on, and present this match in a form where it's United Wrestling Network versus the NWA in essence.
Yep.
And, it was great. And I thought they told a great story.
Yes.
I thought it started, with mutual respect and quite quickly became personal and became a powder keg. Because both guys were very competitive, and Watts dominated the majority of the match, and he got overconfident, just like he did with Ray Rosas, issuing that open challenge. And that's what cost him the Heritage title after, one full calendar year. So I think after this match now, Watts is going to have to go back to the drawing board and reevaluate. But I mean, my God, like, Watts was throwing Eli Drake every which way but loose until and paused. If Watts had just kept his finger on the trigger and it hit maybe one more choke force, or had gone for the murder bomb, which he telegraphed,
right,
he would have won that match. And Eli Drake, a wily veteran, was given just enough time to counter into that gravy train. And I loved it as a longtime broadcaster for United Wrestling Network, and for a guy that's been around these two talents for many a year. It was so much fun for me to be able to call that match and present that match and tell some of the stories and some of the history. And I thought they really delivered. I mean, it was like I said, I think it was a heavyweight hoss fight for sure.
It was. And when you think about the fact that they never touched one-on-one, you got to remember, for the majority of their careers in United Wrestling, they've both been on the dark side. So that's probably why. I mean, you got to figure, they Eli's a fan favorite because he's Eli Drake, and he just generates the fandom, good or bad. Where Watts, like you said, his move's the murder bomb. He was just straight murdering people. So you're not gonna have two guys on that same parallel course go perpendicular all of a sudden. So it makes sense they've just now touched. You mentioned the murder bomb and the gravy train, two of the greatest finishing names in the history of the world. I'm just going to say that right now. Just fantastic. And Watts' murder bomb shirt. My old buddy JJ, you remember JJ? He got the murder bomb shirt, that ridiculous orange mushroom cloud coming out of Eric's head. I love that. That'd be my favorite independent wrestling shirt of all time, for the record.
I'm so mad I don't have one, but I remember.
Well, I'm not sure what size you wear. We'll see if we can get our hands on one for you.
Yeah.
So the next match, I've only seen one of these guys in person and it was only once. And I'm gonna butcher the names, so I'm just gonna let you say the actual singles names. But it was the Real Money Brothers against Friendship Farm. I know it's Gentleman Jervis, and then I get lost. So bear with me here. Go for it.
So yes, tag team action. We switched gears. Gentleman Jervis and Sweet Robin Shaw, who have been a fixture on Championship Wrestling from Hollywood. Last we'd seen him on that show, losing effort against 4 Minutes of Heat. But Jervis has been ratcheting up the seriousness of his presentation and his in-ring action, and taking on the Real Money Brothers. So it's Big Money Clutch, who's the kind of bigger of the two, football player, defensive lineman, and RMB, Real Money Brothers, Suge, who was a boxer and has got quick hands, and made for a very fun, I thought, tag team sprint. This was all action, and the Friendship Farm, Jervis quickly tried his antics, the tickling and everything, and the Real Money Brothers weren't exactly receptive to all of that.
No, not so much. Just but it was, like I said, it was a fun tag team match. It was a great cool down from the intensity that the best friends Drake and Watts brought in the previous match. It was kind of a here's some haha for you for a minute, and then we'll throw up the intensity again, because the next singles match just tore it down too. But I thought the tag team match was a lot of fun, and I can definitely tell you and Alyssa had fun calling it. So that's the most important. We had fun doing it. That's the thing.
I'm not, I think I said there's always a smile on my face when the Friendship Farm is in the place, and I'm not lying. I am first and foremost a pro wrestling fan, and I enjoy the Friendship Farm. It harkens back to just great characters. And I talked to Jervis earlier in the day, and you saw when he came out, he had quite a luxurious head of hair, which is not kind of out of character for Jervis. And I said, I asked Jervis in the back earlier. I go, oh man, the quarantine cut, you've just been letting it go. And he says to me, he goes, well, actually, I wake up every morning with a full head of hair, and I have to deal with shaving it for my presentation. And I just got lazy. So here we are. I'm like, dude, Jervis, you're the greatest thing, that has ever lived. And I think honestly, one of my favorite calls of all time lived in that match. And I said it with a straight face. I said that Jervis was going to open his own dojo, but it wasn't going to be Cobra Kai. It would be Butterfly Kai, because Jervis has always been billed as weighing in at 300 butterflies. Right. So I said Butterfly Kai, and instead of strike first, strike hard, no mercy, I said the motto of Butterfly Kai was going to be tickle first, tickle hard, lots of mercy.
Yes. Oh my goodness. See, that's what, and again, this is going to sound like I'm, freaking shilling, left and right here, but that's what we need. Like, I'm not knocking what we're getting 3 times a week on another company's shows, but like calls like that, you're not going to hear Michael Cole or, you're not going to hear that out of them, because they don't allow themselves to be that silly with the presentation, but it's great.
I've got listen, if I have someone in my ear, it's that we're going to a package or a replay. Other than that, I am left to my own devices.
Yes.
And so, I'm gonna go out there sometimes, but I thought it was great. And I actually was very involved. Originally the match set for last night was going to be Papo Esco and Slice Boogie. We're going to face the Friendship Farm. Slice ended up having a great match with Carl Fredericks, but Papo Esco, because of a family issue, was not available.
Right.
So I was very much involved in bringing in the Real Money Brothers that I have a lot of history with. They've been on Championship Wrestling from Hollywood.
Yep.
They were on Paragon Pro Wrestling. They were on West Coast Wrestling Connection. And I've known these guys for years. And I'm like, okay, we need, it was going to be Slice and Popo, a hard-hitting, no-nonsense team. So when it came time to replace them, I was like, what about the Bonus Boys, who are now the Real Money Brothers? And, lo and behold, they come in and pick up a big win. And I really enjoyed the match. Sweet Robin Shaw was put in a bad place for a long time, kept fighting, hit that sweet victory. If maybe instead of rolling over to make the tag to Jervis, if he had rolled and put an arm over for the cover, things might have been different.
Yeah, and your call there was great. The fact that they kicked out sweet victory, you came off like, what? It was just masterful call there with the kick out sweet victory. I thought that was a really nice touch. Okay, so we had Carl Fredericks and, as you said, Slice Boogie come out. I had not seen Slice Boogie before. I'm familiar with Carl because of New Japan, obviously, but I found myself thoroughly impressed with Slice Boogie. I really did.
Yeah, I think he's kind of our own Eddie Kingston.
Right.
He's New York. He's tough. He's brash. He'll tell you about it. Yeah. I think a big plan early on with this series with Primetime Live was hoping to get an Eddie Kingston, Nick Aldis championship program, which might still happen because obviously there is give and take with AEW. Thunder Rosa showing up on, All Out and Dynamite. And so, it could very much still happen, but I am very impressed with Slice Boogie. Early in his career, and I think Alyssa mentioned, like, a year in, he, faced off with Bob Holly, which nobody wants to be in the ring with, right?
No.
You're gonna get punished.
Yes.
A couple weeks ago, he made his Championship Wrestling from Hollywood debut in a time limit draw with Danny Limelight Rivera, who we'd seen earlier in the show. And if you haven't watched that episode, go on Fight, find it, go on YouTube, United Wrestling or Championship Wrestling, see the Memphis version of the show. That match was a real banger, man. Danny Limelight and Slice brought it, but I think these two were meant for each other. Just hard hitting and coming from two different atmospheres. Slice saying, you don't know what I've been through. You don't know my struggles growing up on the streets. And on the flip side, Carl Fredericks saying, you don't know what I've been through being trained by Shibata and getting
exactly
the bases in the dojo.
Yeah.
And they went out there and just freaking fought the hell out of each other, man. It was physical, and I loved it, dude. I thought it was great. And I thought it was what Primetime Live's all about, because you bring in talent from different promotions. So, yes, last week we had the NWA title, the 10 pounds of gold on the line. This week, NWA Women's World Championship. We had the West Coast Pro Championship defended by Hammerstone last week. There's talent coming in from everywhere. But here is a case where you had, much like the Eli Drake and Watts match, where you have United Wrestling Network and you have NWA. And here you had United Wrestling Network newly debuted with Slice Boogie and New Japan Pro Wrestling. And I just think that this whole show is like a giant sampler platter, and I really just dig the vibe. And these guys just went at it, dude. It was fun to watch and fun to call, because it was a
slugfest. It was fun to call. It did. You guys both sounded like you were into it and intense, and it sounded like you were having a blast.
Yeah, we were, because and it's not manufactured. And like I said, again, first and foremost, I'm a wrestling fan. I love great action, and these guys brought it, man. It was two, Fredericks is known as the Alpha Wolf, but this was two alpha dogs that were just.
Oh yeah,
it was a dog fight, man. It was, and it was fun to watch, fun to call, and these guys went at it, and it was ugly, man. And I saw both guys afterwards, and you mentioned, like Watts earlier had almost inexplicably these like skin missing from his leg.
Yeah.
From his match with Eli Drake because it was so physical. And I caught up with Slice Boogie after this match, and he had welts for days, bro. I mean, his chest and shoulders just were bubbling up.
Yeah.
Like the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man getting a taste of the proton beams. It was just blowing up, and it was a war. And I was like, man, I really enjoyed your match. He's like, yeah. Thanks, bro. But he's sitting there, is like obviously hurting.
Right.
These guys went at it, dude. They went at it big time. And it was, again, I think for the second time last night, it was truly a heavyweight hoss fight. I think Eli and Watts brought it, and these two definitely brought it. And you got a guy like Carl Fredericks who is always going to have Shibata looking over his shoulder, and you don't want to show back up in the dojo the next day with an L, because it's gonna be hell for you, right? I mean, there's extra drills and extra conditioning.
Yeah.
So good on Carl Fredericks for getting the win, but he had to earn it.
I was gonna say, going back to the dojo with an L is kind of like going back to Atlanta after missing an onside kick. Anyway,
yeah.
Cowboys. So the main event, again, just a tremendous showcase of a great pair of people. These two women, and if you didn't know who I'm talking about, it was Thunder Rosa, who, as you mentioned, has been the hottest talent in wrestling in the last 2 weeks or so. You mentioned last night her third defense in 6 days, and she's wrestling tonight on Dynamite. This woman she's the hardest working woman in show business. And she and Priscilla Kelly, you talk about a chip on your shoulder. Holy shit. This woman she came out there ass chap ready to take people down.
Dude, I mean, wow, man. I think this episode is what we intended to showcase 1 week ago. And I hope that people were watching, and I assume they were, like if they got the fight package, or maybe, last night was a busy night wrestling, right? Because you had Impact, you had Dark, you had Late Night Dynamite. There was a lot going on. So I'm thinking a lot of people, maybe if they had the package, they're going to watch our show today. But yes.
Which we appreciate if you are going to watch that, because then you're going to go, oh, so that's what they're talking about for the last hour and a half. Got it.
Right. But word of mouth, word of mouth is huge. And these two, Thunder Rosa and Priscilla Kelly put on a clinic. And yeah, I mean, when we talked about it on commentary, eventually the schedule's got to catch up with Thunder Rosa, because 3 title matches in 6 days. So she faced Eva Lee for the title, in a much talked about matchup on AEW Dynamite. And then Friday, Mission Pro Wrestling, her own creation, her own promotion, women run, women competing top to bottom. So that she wore a lot of hats that day, right? Like, she didn't just train and show up for that match with Lindsay Snow. Like, she must have had a lot on her mind that day.
Oh, I'm sure.
And then, Friday. So Friday, then travel out to California from Texas and compete against Hell's favorite harlot, Priscilla Kelly, in a freaking war. And then had to take off on a red eye last night. And tonight she will team with a rival in Hikaru Shida, who she battled for the AEW title, and great.
Oh my God!
Great fight!
A match that followed the most controversial thing in the last month, and God bless them, man. They went out there and tore it down anyway.
Yeah. So now she'll team with Hikaru Shida tonight against Ivelisse and Diamante. So when I said that Thunder Rosa is, perhaps, the hottest, most buzzworthy talent in all of pro wrestling. I'm not talking just about women's wrestling. I'm talking about pro wrestling in general.
Yes.
You know, and I love what she's doing, and very much like Nick Aldis did with his first title reign, where it was the Crusade. He went to China and defended against Colt Cabana.
Yep.
He went, to I think 4 different continents on his first title reign.
Yeah, he did.
And so that's what, and when this first happened with AEW, that's what William Patrick Corgan said is NWA champions and champions in general are supposed to be fighting champions. And,
Right.
and I think I mentioned on commentary last night that NWA World Championships are supposed to be defended not only across state lines, international lines, but promotional lines.
Yes.
So what Thunder Rosa is doing isn't exactly groundbreaking.
No.
But it is groundbreaking in today's wrestling mentality.
Absolutely.
So for her to show up on AEW with the NWA Women's title is amazing because back in the day, yes, Ric Flair showed up and he proclaimed himself to be the real world's champion, but he had cut off ties with the NWA, with WCW at the time.
Yes.
Thunder Rosa is still with the NWA. And this I think just opens a huge door. This fosters the type of relationships that we should have in this business. Obviously, when NWA had power, they obviously had ties with Ring of Honor, with Marty, Aldis facing Marty Scurll, Flip Gordon. You had the bouncers came in.
Yep.
Look, man, it's a big world. And obviously WWE might not play with the likes of us, but for everybody else to kind of be in business together, it's very exciting. And I think that Thunder Rosa kicked open that door again in a big way.
Absolutely. And like I said, Priscilla Kelly has been the talk of wrestling, for the better part of a year or two with a lot of controversial stuff, but I was thoroughly impressed with both of them last night. They just, like you said, they put on a friggin' clinic in a time where, women's wrestling is really starting to, kick freaking double doors, metal doors down. It's crazy. I love it.
Yeah. And I saw somebody mention, that Thunder Rosa and Priscilla Kelly were our main event on pay-per-view. And this coming Sunday, that Asuka's going to be, defending the Raw Women's Championship in a pre-show.
Yeah.
So, credit is due to Thunder Rosa being just such a great talent that she's captivating the masses.
Yep.
But I mean, that was a very much a worthy main event. That was a war, and for me as a broadcaster, it was great because I've called MMA. Much of that match was MMA based.
Oh, yes.
And pro wrestling based. I mean, it really was just the spectrum of all the things you love to see in a great pro wrestling match. There was submission grappling. There was striking. Yeah. There was high impact. And, I have so much respect for both.
I do too.
I have so much respect for Priscilla Kelly coming off of 6 months of not competing to jump right into a high-profile pay-per-view main event title match to put on the performance that she did. And I also have huge respect for Thunder Rosa, who is, as of last night, defended her title 3 times in the span of 6 days, all the travel, all the media, all the interviews. I'm not sugarcoating here. I think that Thunder Rosa is the most buzzworthy and the hottest talent in pro wrestling today because of what she's doing. She's just breaking down barriers and crossing borders. I mean, it was awesome.
It was really great to see both of them get the main event spot and earn that in the process of executing it. I will say this. You mentioned the WWE putting on their women's championship match on the kickoff, which people were so, riled up about the fact that, Britt Baker and Swole were in the buy-in during All Out, yet it's awful quiet that Asuka, the most dominant WWE women's champion of the past how many years is on the kickoff. It's kind of a double standard.
Especially on Clash of the Champions where all titles are defended.
Right.
You know, that championship should be highlighted.
Right.
No doubt.
It's just unfortunate that the WWE universe tends to be very narrow visioned when it comes to commenting on their product as opposed to AEW or the NWA or whoever. It's like, WWE can do no wrong in some people's eyes. Yet other people's eyes, Vince McMahon is the devil. It's like, you guys can't have it both ways. It can't. So,
well, yeah, no, of course. And Britt Baker's match was a cinematic match, and it was great.
I loved it personally.
Yeah, it was great. And it wasn't for the championship, and it was, a fitting match for buy-in because it was entertaining and it wasn't for a major title, and that's fine. But I do love the fact that the NWA Women's World Title has been defended on Dynamite. That Thunder Rosa challenged for the AEW title on in All Out, and the fact that they're going to team up tonight. But and the fact that AEW, quite frankly, was cool with it because, honestly, I think. Normally, I would think, just from my experience in Impact and stuff, I would think normally talent would probably come out a little earlier than what Thunder Rosa is doing for Dynamite today. Right. So, there's a mutual respect. They allowed Thunder Rosa to defend the NWA Women's World Title last night live on pay-per-view. She'll be there in a tag match. Right. With Hikaru Shida taking on Ivelisse and Diamante tonight. Right. And I just think it kicks open the doors. And so if William Patrick Corgan is going to allow for Thunder Rosa to defend the title or to appear and compete on AEW, what's that mean for Primetime Live? Do we maybe see a Scorpio Sky return? Do we see something like that? Do we see Eddie Kingston, who had an issue with Nick Aldis, come back and challenge for the 10 pounds of gold? It's exciting times. Like, some shit is going to go down.
Well, it's funny you mentioned that. What it means is next week we get AEW's Serena Deeb against the NWA's Allison Kay. Holy shit, is this going to be a good match or what?
Oh, it'll be great, man. It'll be great. And Allison Kay never, really got her true rematch. She had a rematch under Rosa, but Melina and Marty Bell were involved. They appeared. Allison Kay is, just a monster, a physical competitor.
Yes.
And Serena Deeb, her stock has risen. She and again with the NWA tie-in, she had a phenomenal match in Thunder Rosa's Dynamite debut. And looks to be in the best shape of her career, which is saying something. So, I think, next week we truly have NWA versus AEW. And it's a crazy world, man. And I think it's just the tip of the iceberg. I think there's going to be a lot of that coming up.
It's going to be a great, like I said, I made it a point, and I got shit for this, but I really don't give a crap anymore. I made it a point when you guys announced that you were doing the 4 weeks, the first 4 weeks at least, and it was going to be a weekly thing. I immediately went into my wallet and looked at my credit card number and typed it in and ordered the 4-week package because I wanted to see. Because I'm not trying to toot my own horn, but I'm very familiar with what Dave has done the last 20 years or whatever he's been that I've been watching him anyway, and working with Billy and doing the things that they've been doing over the last few years. I wanted to be in my chair in a front row seat because I love the way it was presented. I love the way everything was booked the last 2 weeks, and I can't wait to see where it goes from here. People are talking about, when's the NW Power coming back? When Billy says it'll come back. You have to remember, they had a huge setback in management over the summer that was out of their control completely. So William Patrick Corgan's having to go, okay, I need to go, his number 2 guy is no longer there. So
right. And that
restructuring now. So
was big because that number 2 guy was doing a lot in terms of the production, in terms of the booking.
Yeah, he is the reason I was at the Ocean View when Tim defended against Nick. Right. And got me the interview with Tim in the first place, because there was no way I was going to get in because I hadn't talked to Marquez in forever. So, it was a matter of going through that guy.
And selfishly, I'm hoping, because I'll put it out there, man. When NWA 70 happened and when Power happened,
right?
Back in the day, I had called Adam Pearce, Colt Cabana. I had called NWA title matches. Yep. And that was kind of what brought me back on the scene with Championship Wrestling from Hollywood when the NWA came back. I truly felt kind of snubbed that I wasn't on Power. And so my hope, honestly, and I love Joe Galli, and he's a great dude, and he's very good. But I'm hoping that, like last week, for instance, will maybe be a little bit of a wake-up call to William Patrick Corgan, and Nick Aldis and I go way back.
Yes.
I know he respects my work. I'm hoping that maybe we branded ourselves as a traditional broadcast team. If you watch football and you see Al Michaels and Chris Collinsworth, there's not like a heel and a face. They're calling the action. If you see Joe Buck and Troy Aikman, it's a broadcast team. And I think that's what, Galli and I were and are. And I just want an invitation, man, when it comes back. I just want an invitation to that magical kingdom that is NWA Power.
Yeah, they stacked that team so heavy. You had Joe, I had not seen much of Joe beyond Marquez's promotion, but he's really come in his own as a play-by-play guy without question. But then you had Stu Bennett, who's now gone. You had Sean Mooney, who Sean knows what Sean wants to do, right? He's his own guy. So
Jim Cornette.
And Jim Cornette, who's Jim Cornette. So there's no reason why you can't be brought back, I don't think, personally. So, and you mentioned broadcast partners. Tell us about Alyssa. I think she was great the last 2 weeks, and I've seen her, do the interviewing and whatnot with Marquez, and I think she's really starting to come into her own as well.
Yeah, I agree. I really enjoyed working with her the last 2 weeks. She knows her stuff. She knows the talent. She came up through Santino Brothers. Yes. So when there's Santino talent, which there's a lot of it on our show, she has got great insight. So when it comes to like bar wrestling and stuff, she's done some commentary in the past. But with NXT, she was, an interviewer or a ring announcer for live events.
Right.
So for her to jump straight into live pay-per-view commentary, that's daunting, daunting for sure. And she's done great, and she, very much contributes and was great, and last week we had the benefit of having Joe Galli there, who obviously is very much in tune with the NWA talent and their broadcast. But so last night was a challenge, is her and I for the first time together as a 2-person booth.
Right.
And I couldn't have been happier. Like she brought it. And she very much was well informed. And it's second week in a row that I haven't seen one negative comment about commentary, which is very hard to do, because if you look at like WWE, you got like so many people hate on Michael Cole. Like I think Michael Cole is very professional and great at what he does.
Yes,
but but for whatever reason, people hate on Cole all the time. So
because he's not Jim Ross,
right? So last week we debut, and I'm thinking, oh my God, and I'm glad we had Galli there, because I'm thinking, okay, if we're calling NWA matches and Galli's not there, which he originally wasn't scheduled to be there, like, where's Joe Galli? Where's Joe Galli? So there, I scoured the internet. I didn't see a single negative comment about commentary last week, and then this week I'm thinking, okay, they're going to be like, where's Joe Galli? But everybody's been very complimentary, and that's a big part of that is due to Alyssa and being prepared and being up to the task.
And I think people were a little more forgiving last night due to the fact that Joe literally was stuck in Texas because of the storm. Jeez.
Right. Yes.
I mean, I watched his Instagram live yesterday morning going, yeah, he's not going to California.
Yeah, we're going to make it, and his report from Mission Pro Wrestling was very cool, I thought.
It was very well done. And the fact that he had to file that in the midst of the chaos down there was, again, he's another one of those guys where don't sleep on Joe at all. He's great. No. I do definitely look forward to seeing more of you and Alyssa in the commentary booth. And if Joe comes back, that's wonderful. But I thought you guys did a great job last night. I said it on Twitter. I'll say it to your face because it is what it is. I thought you guys did wonderful last night. I loved all the calls. I love the presentation overall. And I was going to mention prior to talking about Carl Frederick's match, Chris Dickinson is definitely talking about me having my ass chapped. He's definitely looking to tear somebody's head off here probably next week.
He is, and he was all fired up after seeing the Friendship Farm. He was not a fan, clearly, and that's been kind of an ongoing thread with the show. He commandeered the broadcast last week, kicked things off, then absolutely glommed Jordan Cruz, and defeated Jordan Cruz. Now he's not a fan of what Jervis was doing. Right. And I think that, the Dirty Daddy is definitely going to be an ongoing thread through the show. Like if he doesn't like something, he'll let you know verbally and physically, and he'll be back in action physically next week on the show. He's scheduled for a match, and we'll see what happens. But yeah, I think United Wrestling Network and Primetime Live is all about giving the NWA fans what they're not getting these days, because we're putting their titles on the line and we're seeing their talent. And, next week we'll mark 3 straight weeks of NWA championships on the line. But it's also about creating, it's also about creating new stars. And we've seen that. Like people love to Hammerstone, and a lot of people knew Hammerstone anyway from MLW. But last week, a lot of people commented on Hammerstone, and a lot of people commented on Will All Day and Jordan Clearwater and the Tribe and the Wolf Zaddies and everything else. And this week we had, Kevin Martinson and Danny Rivera had a hell of a kickoff match.
Yes.
And that's what Primetime Live's all about. It's like, it's giving fans what they want, but also introducing them to, talent that they don't know, and creating stars, which, if in this day and age in pro wrestling, that's the one gripe you always hear with the major companies is like, oh, they're just rehashing. Create stars, create new stars, and that's what we're trying to do. And I think we're off to a good start.
And I think you mentioned as far as giving the fans what they want selfishly. This is a purely selfish statement here. Having you guys like my tweets or retweet my tweets when I talk about the product is amazing. Like I love that you guys engage the audience, because at the end of the day, if you don't, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, please finish, and then I have one more point on that.
Yeah. If you don't engage your audience, you're not going to retain your audience. And I think that's so key. And it's a huge problem, I feel, with a lot of the companies, because I was talking all throughout the first episode, the negative part of it, and I had more than one person, including I forget who it was, but one of them, DM me and says, "We're working on it, man. Just stick with us." And then, and then when I was watching the replay and just glowing reviews, I had Marquez retweet me. I had you. Everybody was like, so happy that I was enjoying the product and engaging me. The only people I get engaging me besides you guys are the podcasts I listen to, Conrad's Network and maybe other shows, because they realize, like you guys, they're trying to get something up underneath them that's not have that WWE brand on their ass. So I think that's the minute you guys engage the audience.
No, we do. And again, last week was beyond our control. I do appreciate that those that rewatched last week's episode, I think, I didn't see very many like negative comments in terms of the action that we presented last week. It was the stream that had issues. It was technical issues. Like I said, commentary is a fickle thing, and many times people will crap all over commentary, even if you're putting your best efforts out there. So last week with Joe and Alyssa and I, overwhelmingly people were very positive about our efforts, and that felt great. And you have to take, fan interaction into consideration, because that's our audience. And those are the people that have, especially with Primetime Live, have spent money to watch this. So if we don't listen and adjust, then, we're doing ourselves a huge disservice.
Yes.
So, and I think, last night, for instance, we had that Joe Galley piece from Texas, and Rob Stinson, who is one of the three on the This Is the NWA podcast.
Love those guys.
With Gary and Will, and they're great. And I watch them. Yep. I listen to them, because I had to kind of take a crash course too and get back on track with everything going NWA, because it had been a long time since I had called their product. I, binge watched Power. And so Rob Stinson was featured in that piece with Joe Galley last night in terms of reacting to Thunder Rosa and what she's doing and Mission Pro Wrestling. And I gave him a little shout out on air and said, Dr. Rob Stinson from the This Is the NWA podcast. And they were straight up blown away, like, what? But those guys work hard, man, and they put over the product. They put over the product. They do a great job covering the NWA, and now United Wrestling Network and pro wrestling in general. And yeah, I'm all too happy to put them over on air, because I listen to their show, because I need to have my finger on the pulse of what the NWA fans are thinking and what they've seen and what they want to see. But I mean, they were like taken aback, like, oh my God, I can't believe they mentioned us on air. But I mean, week in, week out, they're promoting the product. So why wouldn't I?
Yep, I love those guys. I love our buddy J Cal, the Alliance blog. I think, God, I almost had him on before you sent your my way. I went, I said and Jason's working. So
if you're watching, I'm sorry I bumped you.
No. He came in later and said that he's working right now. He's actually in the office, so there was no way he could do this. So I was like, okay, well, Jason. And then I just put it out there, and when I got your reply, I went, okay, well, that makes it real friggin' easy.
I just everybody. It was a great scene last night, and I can say, to go in depth a little bit, like after last week. And again, at no fault of the in-ring talent. No. Things happen production-wise, and we didn't get to put our best foot forward. But yesterday was very much a clean slate.
Yes.
And I hope that people were watching, and if they didn't, I hope that word of mouth. I mean, everybody online is talking about how great, Thunder Rosa Priscilla Kelly was. I hope that they'll, get the replay and give us another shot. It is daunting is a word I've used a lot, but it's a daunting task to put on a live broadcast, live pay-per-view. There's a lot of moving parts. And the fact that we were even on air last week and made it happen after a 2-hour power outage, is saying something. It was a small victory. But last night was the show that we wanted to present. Last night was what United Wrestling Network Primetime Live is all about, in association with the NWA, in association with New Japan and all the other promotions that will be involved. Last night was what we're all about. And I think it was a great kind of restart for what we were going to do.
Not much better plug I can give than that, I guess. It is what it is. So we've got week 3 on Tuesday. We've got, as I mentioned, Allison Kay, Serena Deeb, which, I had Serena Deeb on our radar when I was running that women's promotion, 10 years ago. So she's still amazing, viable talent. And you got Allison Kay, who, on top of being drop dead gorgeous, she's one of the greatest athletes in women's wrestling, period. So I can't say enough good things about Allison, and it's going to be a hell of a show for sure.
Yeah, well, and Allison Kay's got, a gripe and a point to prove. She never got her just due. She, was NWA World's Women's Champion from Crockett Cup to Hard Times.
Yep.
And lost the rematch, but, Melina and Marty Bell were involved in that. And, Melina, obviously a lot of buzz with her these days, and we'll see where she stands. But Allison Kay gets to, get back to what she does best, and that's competing and kicking ass. And Serena Deeb is important, very important too, because Serena Deeb gave Thunder Rosa an incredibly competitive match.
Yes.
In Thunder Rosa's AEW debut on Dynamite. Serena Deeb, newly signed to AEW, clearly looks to be in the best shape of her life.
Oh my God, yeah.
Has trained great talent, but now gets to get back to what she does best, and that's compete. Yep. And I think after the buzz of Thunder Rosa Priscilla Kelly, what better way to follow up than former champion Allison Kay and Serena Deeb, plus United talent CeCe Chanel and Ruby Reyes.
Ruby's wrestling next week, yeah. So
I mean, Ruby and Allison Kay is a match that I would love to see. Ruby Reyes, and and let's not forget that 1 week ago we saw Heather Monroe and Camille in a very competitive match. And Heather Monroe took Camille to the limit like no one has done.
No.
So the United Wrestling Network women's division, along with the NWA women's division, is really stacked. Plus, we got AEW talent coming in. I mean, I'm really loving what we're doing with the women's division. I think next week will be a great showcase for that.
It will be for sure. And again, Todd, I really appreciate. I know we were going to go at 9 o'clock, so I appreciate you starting at 8 with me. I really appreciate you coming in. Again, kind of a daunting start, but it was great to talk United Wrestling. And you know what? Straight up, I miss you, dude. Like I really do.
Likewise, man. You know what? And I'm just so happy to be back.
Right?
5-6 months of nothing, and then we did a big 6-week 2-day taping of Championship Wrestling from Hollywood, and it was like, okay, finally. And then these 2 weeks of live pay-per-view, and it's so great being flying without a net, being live again. I haven't done that since my Impact days, so and the fact that I haven't effed up too bad.
That's right.
So I'm happy.
Because if you do, the rest of the fans will be right up your ass about it. So
they sure would. Yep. They don't. You effed up. You effed up. Like they will let you know in a hurry. And and I'm very proud of last night because we had some great NWA matches, and we had Joe Galli on week 1, and he was great. And you pretty much have 2 play-by-play guys going, but I don't think we stepped on each other. I thought, we, really helped each other. But with Joe Galli not being there this week on commentary, but in a, other capacity with, the special report from Mission Pro Wrestling, I'm thinking, oh, here the NWA fans are going to come out. Where's Joe Galli? Where's Joe Galli? But everything's been very complimentary of Alyssa and I last night. We put the work in. I felt great about the broadcast, and we're just all about putting over the talent, and that's the thing too, man. Like back in the day, I've worked with some people that maybe were a little bit more enthused about getting themselves over than the product, and I tried to get the product over, and now I'm getting sandwiched. But last night was all about the talent and getting them over and the product itself, and it was refreshing and it was great.
You said that, and I let's go back to what you said a little while ago about the wrestling promotions coming together and working together harmoniously. You mentioned, working together harmoniously as a broadcast team, and not putting yourself over, but putting the talent over. I love that, and I wish that more promotions, more people, more talent in wrestling, be it announcers, be it wrestlers, whoever would do that. Like, and I distinctly remember, the talent back in, Marquez days, just, making sure they, got their shit in, if you will. But, now it's like everybody wants everybody to succeed. And I just freaking get off on stuff like that. That just makes my friggin' day.
Yeah. I like where we're at, man. I like where we're at. And if you haven't given us a look yet on Primetime Live, I think last night was the show we wanted to display 1 week ago. So, get on there, get on Fight. Even if you buy the package, see last week. Now the show's up in its true form,
right?
Or pay $7.99. I mean, $7.99 for the title match we saw with Thunder Rosa and Priscilla Kelly, well worth the money. And a lot of other action, hard hitting. Carl Fredericks and Slice Boogie was great. Tag team action. Danny Limelight and Kevin Martin just completely throwing caution to the wind. You're going to get your money's worth. And
exactly. And last week's show was definitely worth buying the package, man. You had Camille and Heather, you had Nick and Mike, you had a great undercard with them. It's been 2 solid weeks, 3 hours worth of programming. I encourage everybody listening, watching, whatever you guys are doing with me right now, because we're going to be audio here momentarily when I get the thing on the anchor side. But go watch these shows. And then if you guys out there watching us right now and listening later can tell me that you watch these 2 weeks of programming and you're not convinced to be an NWA fan, a United Wrestling Network fan, a fan of these talents, then I don't know what the hell to tell you. I really don't. Yeah,
man. I hear you. I'm with you. We were very excited last night. It was very much a euphoric atmosphere after. We're like, okay, yes, we did it. This is what we wanted to present, and we will build off of this, and we've got great stuff planned coming forward. You never know who you're going to see. There's going to be champions from different promotions, nationally televised promotions, that are going to come in, and it's going to get even more exciting moving forward.
I can't wait, brother. Todd, it was great to have you on. I appreciate it. If you're free next Wednesday, I'd love to have you back on to recap week 3.
I'm always happy to talk about Primetime Live. And yeah, and I mean, I'm so excited. It was such a great show last night, but again, solemn mood today. Rest in peace, Road Warrior Animal, and what an icon, man. But he and Hawk are tagging up again upstairs, and if nothing else, that gives me some peace of mind that they've been reunited.
Yeah, it's just I'm hesitant now. I got to make sure that I mind my P's and Q's and still get into the pearly gates, but make sure I duck and cover when I do, because I'm not going to take a doomsday device when I get there. I don't want to deal with that. So,
yeah, that's scary. It's good. Got to be ready. You never know when.
Todd, thank you so much. We'll see you next week right here on the United Wrestling Network recap. And for everybody at the Championship Network, we'll see you later. Actually, we'll see you in about a half hour if you're watching on YouTube, because the Greg Cherry Show is coming up at the top of the hour. We will see you guys then. Have a great day.